I have a feeling that most beginners and even many seasoned developers actually avoid the expensive look of their own products from the very beginning. And maybe that's actually a good thing for people who realize this and end up watching videos like mine. The thing is, when we talk about a premium style or an expensive looking product, it usually consists of two parts. The first part is technical, how to visually design an interface that looks premium. And the second part is brand and marketing, how to make people actually perceive your product and your brand as premium. And I think it's exactly because of this second part that many developers end up sabotaging both. Because the second part requires a lot of money. And it's not only money, it's also knowledge, understanding why you are doing it, how to achieve that perception, and how to maintain it over time. Which means that for a normal person who is just starting a company or maybe has been coding their product for 2 or 3 years, building that brand perception is extremely difficult. So what actually happens instead? People simply design the interface in whatever style they personally know, or in the style that the cheapest available designer can produce. And that's exactly how premium positioning gets lost from the very beginning. Now, the brand perception part. Yes, the marketing side of it, it's a huge topic. And honestly, that deserves a separate video. But the technical part, how to approach an interface so that it actually feels premium, that's exactly what today's video is about. So let's train our eyes to recognize it. Actually, one of the most popular videos on our channel is about this exact topic: UI consistency. Expensive design almost always behaves like a system, while cheap design feels like things were added one by one over time. In a premium interface, you usually notice that shapes repeat. Knobs, panels, and sections often come from the same base geometry, almost like a visual language. Colors also have a job. Accent colors are not there just to make an interface pretty. They usually indicate something specific, like modulation, active parameters, or warnings. After a few minutes, the user's brain starts learning this visual code. Typography works the same way. You don't randomly mix 5 fonts. Parameter names behave one way, values behave another way, and the section titles follow their own rule. When everything follows a system, the interface feels intentional, and intentional design almost always feels more expensive. The second principle is hierarchy. Expensive interface almost always feel organized. You open the plugin and instantly understand where you are and where to look first. This usually comes from clear module structure. But hierarchy is not just about grouping controls. It's about guiding the user's attention. Some elements are louder, some are quieter. Some controls invite interaction, others stay in the background. When hierarchy works well, users don't have to think too much. They simply start using the plugin. And that feeling of clarity is often interpreted as quality. Quick reality check. In 15 years of designing audio software interfaces, I have never seen a premium-looking UI appear by accident. So if you are hoping a cheap design will magically turn into a premium one, that's basically a lottery. And it's a lottery you almost never win. The third principle is functional minimalism. This is not about removing features, it's about controlling visual complexity. Most premium interfaces actually use very few visual ingredients, usually something like 2 or 3 main shapes, accent materials, font styles. When designers go beyond that, the interface starts feeling noisy, and brain interprets that noise as chaos. Minimalism creates clarity. Clarity creates trust, and trust is a big part why something feels like professional software. The fourth principle is contrast. In good interfaces, important things stand out, while unimportant things fade into the background. Accent colors are used carefully, not everywhere. Text is easy to read, and controls are easy to recognize. If users have to struggle to read your interface or understand where to click, the product immediately feels amateur. The fifth principle is interaction quality. This is something people often underestimate. But the moment you start turning knobs, you instantly feel whether the interface is polished or not. Movement should feel smooth, matter should respond naturally, and buttons should give feedback visually. Small details like hover states or visual reactions tell the user that the product was built carefully. When those interactions feel sloppy, the plugin instantly feels cheaper than it actually is. Of course, there are many more rules behind expensive design. You can borrow them from high fashion, architecture, and luxury brands, and sometimes designers even copy these elements. But if you don't understand why they work, you often end up with something that looks like a fake Rolex. It may look expensive at first glance, but it doesn't feel like a real instrument. Still, I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. And finally, realism. Even if design is not skeuomorphic, expensive interfaces usually follow some form of physical logic. Knobs feel mechanical, materials feel believable, and light behaves consistently. Even flat interfaces often simulate depth and layers because our brain understands objects in space. When the interface follows that logic, it feels stable and trustworthy. When it doesn't, it starts feeling fake. Expensive design is not just about beautiful interface. Of course, beauty sells, but it's definitely not about adding fancy visual effects. It's much more about the approach, the mindset of the person who decides to design the product in a certain way, and of course the skill of the designer. If you are a young developer who is just starting to build your first plugin, you probably don't yet have the huge marketing budget and a strong brand reputation. But if you start applying at least some of these principles, you will already begin thinking about your product differently. Your interface will feel more intentional, your product will look more trustworthy, and over time this also helps with everything else. How you communicate your product, how you position it, and how people perceive its value. Because good design is often the very first step towards building a strong brand. So until the next time.